Hey everyone, this is Justin Silverio with the Boston Investor. In this video I want to take you through my rehab analysis that I'm offering as a free resource to anyone who subscribes to my blog. I created this rehab workbook off of Jay Scott's rehab analysis over at 123flip.com, and I really expanded on the depth in which you can break down your rehab costs, and have also included many Excel formulas to make it faster to analyze a rehab and to analyze your rehab costs on an ongoing basis. So there are two main uses to this file. The first is when you just need to analyze a deal quickly. In this case, you only really need to use this first tab here. The second is when you have a property under contract. This is when you'll use most of the tabs to do things like create a budget, create a scope of work for your contractors, track your actual expenses on the whole rehab, track which contractors are working on which work items, track how much you've paid each contractor, and if you're paying them more or less than you actually budgeted for. You can also create a finished product list so you can email it over to Lowe's, and you can do a lot more with this workbook. Alright, so I think the best way to kind of go through this is just to dive in and show you how it works. So we'll start with this first tab. You'll notice there are some colored cells. The purple ones and the cells in column C are deal specific cells. So you'll be updating every deal. Also, the light blue cells are for financing and are also deal specific. So most of these blue cells are automatically populated through formulas, but I'll take you through those as they are deal specific. And finally, the white cells are either fixed or variable costs, but you only need to input them once because they very rarely change. So for instance, on my holding costs, my insurance, utilities, lawn care, cleaning, I inputted those once I knew what the actual cost was, and it stayed the same deal after deal. So I really never have to change those. Alright, so let's take a look at this by going through an example. So the first thing that you want to do up here top left, business name, you can just change that to your company name, and then I like to just throw in an address here. So let's make an address up. Alright, so you can change this. Last year I worked on a deal, and let's go through that deal so you can see how it works out. So the purchase price on this property was $370,000. So any expense is a negative and any credit is a positive. So once I enter the $370,000 in, you'll notice the first thing that happens is that this loan for purchased cell automatically populates. So this is basically saying that if you look up here in this formula, it's saying that I'm getting a loan for 75% of the purchase price. So I'll show you how to change this so it's a cash deal later on, because it's very simple to change. So let's continue assuming that you're going to get financing on the purchase price. The next three cells are white cells, so I don't have any inspections, appraisals, or surveys usually on any of my deals. Lender fees, so right now this lender that I use, I have to put a half a point down, and it's about $3,000 in origination fees and other miscellaneous costs. So if I want to say yes, let's assume that the loan will be a half a point down and $3,000 in expenses. All that I have to do is put a Y here, and it automatically populates the appropriate amount. Now this formula is kind of long, but really the two main areas that you want to look at is this right here says that it's $3,000. So if you have a bank and they only charge $2,000 or $5,000, whatever it is, you can update this number here, and then with the points down you can just change this right here to how many ever points your bank is charging you. That's really all you have to change. The next one, closing costs. So this is automatically populated. It's taking into account my attorney fees, government recording fees, and title insurance. The next one line is commissions. So if you're a real estate agent and you purchase a property and you receive a commission, then you can put this in here. This deal that I'm using as an example, my partner was our buyer's agent, so we did receive a commission. So to do that, you want to enter in, now you can input the actual amount that you received, but I like to do formulas. So that's a credit, $7,400. Now with this deal, we did receive a rehab loan, and the rehab loan was 100% of the rehab costs. So I'm going to change this to a Y. And once I do, nothing happens, because right now the rehab costs are 0. So once I update the rehab costs, the rehab loan will update accordingly. Now again, we're using this as just as a quick example of how to analyze a rehab. So if I'm going through and I just quickly want to analyze a rehab, I wouldn't do anything more for the rehab cost than input an estimated cost. And I can show you what to do once you have a property under agreement and you want to go more into detail on the rehab budget. But for now, we put $30,000. Now if you look back up here in the rehab loan, it's updated to a positive $30,000 to offset this expense. Okay, let's go down to holding costs. Mortgage payments for this bank, they were charging us 5.5%, but you can change that and it will update this cell accordingly. Also, all of these holding costs are based on a 6-month hold period. So if you want to change that, all that you have to do is just input whatever amount of the number of months that you want to use. If you want to use 8, then all of these numbers here are linked to the number of months here. So they update. Property taxes, you'll notice, is a positive. That is because it is based off of this selling price. So once I update the selling price, you'll notice that it'll go back to a negative. But if you double click in here, I have this little schedule over here with the residential tax rates for the towns that I do most of my deals in. And if you scroll this up to the town or down to the town that you're working in and then just hit enter, then it will update using that town's tax rate. Insurance, standard cost, utilities, lawn care, cleaning, other. Okay, so all set with the holding costs. Now the selling costs. So this property didn't really require all that much rehab, and we thought we were going to be able to sell it on the back end for $480,000. So notice once I updated that, my property taxes updated. And then this loan payoff is basically taking the sum of this $277,000 and the rehab loan to get to the payoff. So that's automatic. Commissions to agents. Since my partner was our seller's agent, we only had to pay a 2% commission, but if you need to change this around, you can do that and the cell will update as so. Buyer's home warranty, termite letter, staging. We didn't have any staging in this property, so I can change that to 0, but usually I leave that as $2,000 just to budget safely. Seller's closing costs are a standard cost. Transfer tax and my attorney fee. So if you come down to this deal analytics down at the bottom in the yellow here, you'll notice that my potential profit is $52,000. My cash invested is $107,000. My return on investment is 48%, and my annualized return on investment is 97%. So numbers are looking great. Now, as I mentioned before, let's say we're thinking about doing this deal in cash, because maybe we have a lot of cash laying around, and deals are scarce, so maybe we want to put all our cash in this. So all that I have to do to analyze this as a cash basis deal, I just have to change this first blue cell to 0, and all the blue cells change to 0. So it automatically updates and clears out all the financing assumptions in there. So now if we come down to the bottom, you'll see that our profit increased because our holding costs decreased, because now we don't have a mortgage payment or interest that we have to pay. But now our cash invested is $401,000. It increased from $107,000 to $401,000. And now our return on investment decreased substantially down to 16%, and our annualized return on investment is now at 32%. So it's up to you whether or not you think that's a good deal. I personally don't like this deal. The return on investment is too low for me. The profit is still good, but for the amount cash invested, I want to see a higher return. So we did go into this deal with financing, and these are basically the actual numbers that we came out with. Okay, so that's how you analyze a deal quickly. The next step is, say that you have a property under contract. So all that you have to do is to, assuming that you did this rehab analysis in the first place, then all that you need to do is just link this. So you can say equals negative, and then go over to the second tab and go down all the way down to the total. So H85, just so it links. That's all you have to do. Or you can start a new spreadsheet, and this is automatically linked to the budget versus actual tab, so you wouldn't have to do anything. Alright, so let's go into this second tab here. This second tab is an overview of your budget and actual expenses, the contractors that are responsible for each work item, and any notes that you want for these general tasks. So these budget numbers, you'll notice that some of the cells are white and some of them are gray. And as this note indicates, that the gray cells are coming over from the budget detail tab down here. And I'll show you that tab in just a moment. I just want to enter in a couple budget numbers for these white cells. So if I say $1,000 for permits, dumpsters $2,000, you'll notice some of these cells I have demo and then additional demo, and when you see the budget detail tab, you'll know why I have additional demo. I'll explain that a little bit. So let's just include those two. Let's go to the budget detail tab, so now you can see what I was talking about. This budget detail tab goes through each room in the house. So it's divided into 3 sections. So you have your general rooms in this section. You have your bathrooms in this section. And then you have your kitchen, or kitchens if you're working on a multifamily, in this section. So let's enter in some information. So say for this room, we're going to start with the dining room. Say you have about $500 in demo, $400 in framing. You want one door. Now with these rows that have labor, material, and total cost in them, I made it easy, so all that you have to do is enter a quantity. If there is one interior door, all that you have to do is put a 1. And for installing trim, so say you're talking baseboard, if you have a 10 by 10 room, you have 10-foot wall, and there are 4 walls. So 40 linear feet of baseboard trim is equivalent to $104 based on this cost. So you can go through this room and put down all your costs, and then in this notes section you can write specific details for your contractor. So for interior doors you can say install split jamb door for entry company to provide. So now my contractors know that they need to install a split jamb door for the entry, and we are going to provide the material. Now after you get done with this room, all that you have to do to create a new room is just copy this and then paste it down below, and then you can start again. Change the room, and then you can clear these out. And then you can just start adding more. Now as you enter in all this information, this total is going to keep track of every budget item on this sheet. So even ones that are over here. So if you change that to a 4, this will update. Okay. And now, as I stated before, this all rolls up to this rehab budget versus actual into these gray cells. So going back to what I said before, you have this demo line and then additional demo. I created the additional demo line because you may have demo that you have to do in the exterior, in the basement, or in the attic that you might not have created an attic or basement section in this tab here. So I created a general additional demo. This spreadsheet is set up so you have all your interior costs going down, and there's this subtotal for the interior costs, and then you have your exterior with the subtotal as well. Then you have a contingency factor for your budget, which I always recommend having a contingency factor. So you can change this to any percentage that you want, and it will update this number here. So then your total budget right now is $5,900. Alright, let's input some contractor names for each of these line items. Okay, that's good enough. Say you're at the beginning of the job, you have your budget, you know who's going to be working on each item, and now you're getting into the rehab and you're paying expenses. So say you're paying permits, you have $500, your dumpsters actually cost $1,500, $1,500, and your demo is $1,200. Column J is tracking your variance, so it's showing if you're under or over budget. And then you can track this, and you can come down to the bottom and you can see your total over or under budget. So pretty straightforward. The one cool analysis tool that I just created for this is if you scroll over to the right. So many times I like to see how much I'm paying each contractor. So this whole schedule is all formula driven, so you don't need to do anything with this. So for 123 contractor right now, his total budget was $1,000, and his actual right now is $500, so he's under $500 against his budget, which is good. Joe Carpenter, we had budgeted $3,300 for all his work items that he was working on throughout the whole job, and right now he's at $2,700. So this is a cool analysis, because at the end of a job, if you keep on seeing a specific contractor that's always going over budget, you can have a discussion with him and see why he's going over budget. I've been using this in my last couple deals, and it's nice to see this grouped this way. Alright, the next couple tabs are pretty straightforward. These are my prices that I pay my contractors for. You can use it as a guideline if you want, or if you're an experienced investor, you can input your prices here. And this flows up to the budget detail tab here. So if you click on one of these cells, you can see that it's pulling from this contractor pricing tab. So everything's linked, so you just have to update it from one place, and everything gets pushed up to ultimately this rehab analysis. The next tab, finished materials. These are some of the finished materials that I've used in the past for my rehab deals. These are all Lowe's products, so when you go through, for instance, you can enter in the quantity of 1 for this refrigerator, and it automatically updates this total cost over here. Now what I do is I update for all my finished products that I'm going to buy from Lowe's, and I basically just print this out and then fax it to my contact at Lowe's, and they get everything together. So I just have to call up and give them my credit card over the phone, and that's it. That takes care of all my finished products. The other thing right here, the material number, to make it easy for your contractors, you want to reference a material number on your scope of work. I usually label all my appliances with an A starting at A1, and then my doors starting at D1. So if you want, you can have this A1, and then A2, A3, A3. So now when you go back over to your budget detail, in your notes under appliances, you can write down install A1, A2, A3, company to provide. So now they know if they come over to this finished material. So you should always print this out and have give this to the contractor. Maybe you just want to print out column A through C, because they don't need to really know the cost. And then when you give them the budget detail along with the finished material list, then they can match up and know which one they should install in which place. So this is extremely helpful for doors, for lighting, for plumbing fixtures. Appliances are pretty straightforward. And this final tab here is open items. So this is just a good area to keep track of your deal, any open items, any questions, any follow-up, any comments that you need to make. It's just nice to have it all in one place. So anytime throughout the deal, you can always just come to this one workbook, and you can find all the information about the deal as you're going through. Now, as you're nearing the end of the deal, there are two things that I do. So when I'm really close to the end, this rehab cost right now, this is linked to your budget costs. If you remember, we went over and linked it to this cell here. So when I near the end, your expenses should be almost 100% for the deal. So what I do is I link it to my actual. So now this spreadsheet is working off actual numbers. And the other thing that I do is, depending on if the market is going up or going down, I always want to adjust accordingly. So now that we're looking at actual expenses, I want to reevaluate to see if this selling price should change. Say I do analyze my comps and I see that similar homes are selling now for $500,000. So I'd update this to $500,000, but I want to keep my budget selling price here because I always like to see how I estimated the rehab or the ARV compared to what the ARV is at the end of the project. And that really shows me if I'm being conservative or if I need to be more conservative when I'm estimating ARVs. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Go over to my blog, thebostoninvestor.com, subscribe, and get your free rehab analysis file. If you have any questions, comments, feel free to post them on my blog. Thanks for watching.